Hello, everyone. Welcome to part 3 of Shooty Compares and Contrasts, Modern Warfare 2019. Um, yeah. So where do I begin? Suppose where I'm gonna begin is um discussing what we'll talk about in this video. So this video is going to be primarily focused on the actual gameplay stuff, like level design and how the game controls and feels and stuff. So hopefully it will feel a lot less complainy and whiny than the other two videos are. I do because while I have my reservations about the story of 2019 itself, I do actually think that from a gameplay standpoint, it's got a lot going for it. So, with that out of the way, I'll hop right into talking about the story of this game. Not the story, the gameplay. We already talked about the story. So, um, how. So, level design in a Call of Duty campaign is very important, believe it or not. It's kind of its most detrimental element in a lot of ways because the levels, the gameplay loop in a level, which people do oversimplify in my opinion, it does have a merit of truth to it. Um, the oversimplification of level design in COD is typically um, you you enter a corridor full of bad guys who will endlessly spawn until you shoot your way up till the end of the corridor, and then you end up in another corridor and you repeat this till you're at the end of the level, or maybe a quick time event or something. And this is not 100% true. There is some element to truth to it, but I feel like Call of Duty doesn't get quite enough credit in this regard when it comes to at least some of the older Call of Duty games. Um, COD 4 in particular probably stands out amongst them, in my opinion, as being not this typical example of what a modern shooter is. Um, so the uh, 2019 has to do a lot to kind of shake some of that stigma loose. Um, and I don't think it's successful in that, but I do feel like it does enough to at least um, compensate for it by making what's happening on screen look and feel good, and that can actually make it feel less like you're playing a movie. Because frankly, a lot of some of the Call of Duty games are a little bit more like movies than they are games. Perfect examples of this, in my opinion, are the Black Ops games. Black Ops games um, heavily embody the core criticism of tons of cutscenes, quick time events, and not a lot of gameplay. Um, 2019 kind of does that, but it kind of also tries to blend a lot of what the older COD 4 games had going for them. So, COD 4 um, was actually a breakaway from the stereotypical formula that Call of Duty games had. Call of Duty games used to be like during the loading screens, you would have cutscenes that played and um, would basically let the player. It would show the player some story, then dump you into gameplay. COD 4 took a different approach where the loading screens were more like mission briefs telling you what you're going to do during the mission, and then they would put you in the mission, and then cinematic things would happen, but the player did not have to participate in them. It's similar to like Half-Life, where Half-Life, while characters are standing there having a conversation, the player can stand there and listen to the conversation and get get their fill of the story. But if a player doesn't want to, they can just kind of fuck off and do whatever they want. Um, which is something I love about COD 4 particularly, is that you can breeze through the game really quickly. If you've played the games as many times as I have and you don't want to watch a certain thing happen over and over again, for the most part you can breeze through that. Um, 2019, it blends that a little bit, a tiny bit. Um, it blends the cutscene heaviness with player interacting with cinematic events. Um, Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I feel like I'm being forced to sit still for too long, and that can get a little boring. Um, 2018 is a very slow game compared to a lot of the other Call of Duty games, especially Modern Warfare 2. It's trying to be more realistic, so most of the time the player is spent actually creeping through areas and through levels and stuff, um, doing a lot of breaching and clearing. Um, and I feel like it kind of does this issue I saw come up with a lot of the Call of Duty games that came after Call of Duty 4. Um, so the best way I can explain this is in COD 4, the mission all gillied up. Everybody knows it. It's basically you play Captain Price and you sneak around in a ghillie suit, and it's probably the most famous Call of Duty mission ever. It's probably everyone's favorite. Um, and I don't mean like literally everybody. It's their favorite. What I mean is that tons of people know it and they like that mission a lot, and it's because it's really good at what it does, and it's a extremely thrilling, tense experience your first time through. If you've played it as much as I have, most of the effect wears off because eventually you kind of it becomes routine, and that's mainly because your companion character is usually like telling you what to do next and all that. It was a really good mission, but then they started to overdo that formula in the some of the later Call of Duties. Modern Warfare 2 had 3 missions similar to No Gillied Up or All Gillied Up. Um, 3 missions where it's the player and one companion character, and the companion character and you are sneaking, and the companion character is usually telling you what to do, so that way your sneaking is successful. Um, and they just kept doing that in later Call of Duty games more and more to the point where it became boring and repetitive. It's a fun trick to do sometimes, but if you keep doing it, it eventually grows stale. So the 2019 does this in its own way. They do have those a couple of those kind of missions in this game, but what they also kind of introduced in a new level mission format. In my opinion, it's a new mission format, and I call it the breach and clear formula, which is you're instead of running through a large building and or level, it's what I should say, and you're killing enemies in corridors and stuff like that. Instead, you're put in a much smaller, cramped location where you simulate a QCB um, engagement. You're simulating a close quarter combat mission where you have to go from room to room, checking your corners, being very thorough and stuff like that. They do that a bunch in 2019. It starts with a the townhouse mission. I don't think that's the name of the mission, but basically you clear this one house in somewheres in downtown London, and your first time through, it's a really effective level, um, really cool level. I sort of like it. Um, the problem is then later on in the game they do the breach and clear thing a couple more times, and it stops feeling fun and it feels more repetitive. Um, some people will complain about how Call of Duty mission games will usually abandon a mechanic um, from one level to the next, and that is true. But I also feel like repeating mission ideas over and over again can also kind of kill the pace of the game just a tiny bit. Um, so my genuine criticism would be maybe cut back on those kind of slow paced missions, which they did in Modern Warfare 22 in their to their credit, but um, we're talking about 2019 as if 2022 doesn't exist yet. So, um, other than that, though, they introduce a lot of older mechanics that you see in games, things like controlling like remote control cars with like explosives and sniping and stuff. But they do on occasion add their own like little twists to it. Did I say remote control cars? I mean like the Predator drone thing. Like so in this game, 2019, instead of having like you control a Predator missile because you're working with like rebel terrorists or whatever you want to call them, rebels like who are not like an officially funded military, they don't have access to a drone. So instead, they make remote control airplanes with C4 packed in them, which is a fun, neat idea. I like the idea that it's like they played on the fact that these guys can't afford actual like high tech weaponry, so they kind of improvise. It does play well into what they are, which are like rebels. Um, 20 the sniping is they have one mission in this game where it's sniping and it's a lot of fun and I like it because it's not uh it's not like your typical sniping in a game where um prime example coming out of COD 4, a lot of the sniping in COD 4, you put your crosshair on your target, you are definitely going to hit it, and it's because you're not shooting your targets at like far ranges. In 2019, they actually have you set up in a situation where targets are out like 200 or 600 meters, something like that, which is really far away. Um, so you have to like they're so far away, you actually have to adjust for bullet drop and sometimes for the wind even, which is really cool. Um, it doesn't it allows the player to interact with the sniping just a little bit more and even hone your skill a little bit because those mechanics of bullet drop come into play when you play like the Warzone for instance or Ground War, those like multiplayer modes with like very big maps. So it's neat how they allow the player to get that tiny little practice in where they can learn it in a environment where you're not getting shot at by a real player. So I actually do appreciate that about 2019. Um, the the other gameplay elements they added in mechanics that I actually enjoyed a little bit was the mounting system they added. I think that's a lot of fun. It allows you to steady your aim. Uh, the standout thing about 2019 in particular, though, is probably the guns and the sound design. The sound design in 2019, especially with the guns, is so fucking good. I cannot I cannot stress just how good the guns sound in this game. It's a breath of fresh air because literally every Call of Duty after, I want to say starting in like Black Ops 2, um, gun design sucked in my opinion. Like when it came to like sound, especially in a lot of the sci-fi Call of Duties, like the guns just do not sound good. 2019, the guns actually sound really good and distinct from one another, um, which is very good. Which is a good thing to provide feedback to the player, so that way they can at least identify what kind of weapon is being shot at them. Uh, the reload animations, there's so much love put into the reload animations. I cannot stress how good they are, how good they look, and there's a great amount of attention to detail to all of it. It Everything about it feels good. This is probably the best Call of Duty when it comes to guns by far. I like it is extremely hard for me to even Modern Warfare 2, my beloved, uh struggles to compete in that particular department. I love it. The Even the recoil patterns, they like, yeah, you get more recoil than when you get in a lot of the older Call of Duty games, but it feels just right. Um, so yeah, I cannot stress how much I love the guns in this game and the sound design. And it's not even just guns; it's also stuff like explosions, um, it, even the stuff like the car door opening. It sounds just right. Everything in these games sounds just right, and it's good. I love it. I can eat it to bits. I probably did not give Modern Warfare 2022 enough credit for that, but that one also had pretty good sound design, and I might talk more about that when I actually get around to talking to the multiplayer for that game. The bottom line is that one thing that they almost hit the nail on the head with in this game was gameplay. Um, and I don't think I have a ton to complain about when it comes to gameplay in this. Uh, they they always try to find ways to keep things interesting and different, without you feeling like you're just doing the same thing over and over again. So I'll give them kudos for that. I think I would have to give them a couple of minor criticisms, excuse me, such as less quick time event bullshit. I hate quick time events. Less cutscenes. Um, Cinematic moments should just happen, whether or not the player is actually involved. Um, it makes the world feel a little bit more real if the player can turn around and miss something. And if you're worried about the player missing it, the the player can just go back and play the game again if they missed something. It, it, they're not gonna fucking like never not see it again. You can play the campaign more than once if you want to. I think you can risk allowing the player to like look away for a couple seconds while something's happening. Uh, I mean, to their credit, they have a bunch of that in this game. I just wish they would deal without the cutscenes. Um, Other than that, though, and maybe not overdo certain like special mission types. You can get away with overdoing like your more traditional battle scenario gameplay, because that's like a gameplay loop that's very traditional for a first-person shooter, especially military shooters where you are in a battle scenario and you have to push forward. Um, the sneaking around stuff, I think, could take a little bit of a chill pill on, because the more you do it, the less interesting it becomes. Uh, all Gillied Up was really good because it was like a one-time thing in the entire game. I could another prime example of this is the AC-130 mission from Call of Duty 4. Uh, Traditionally in games, especially like older Call of Duty games, you might get this on rails turret shooting mission, and a lot of people hate those. Uh, the AC-130 mission in COD 4 is not a hated mission, and it's because it's a unique take on a turret section. In my opinion, anyway, it's a interesting, unique way to change up what a turret section in a video game looks like. Because typically in a turret section, you're on a truck or at the ass end of an airplane, shooting down other airplanes or helicopters and guys in other trucks and stuff like that. Uh, the AC-130 mission puts you in a perspective where you are you're invulnerable to the enemies, so they give you friendlies you have to escort, and then those friendlies are obviously vulnerable. And then to top it all off, though, they give you really big fuck off guns, and they give you uh, really cool thermal vision to boot. So it takes a couple of things you traditionally see in a turret section in a video game, and it turns them on their head a little bit, and it makes it interesting, and it breaks up the gameplay. You go from a mission where you literally your helicopter was shot down, and you're like this vulnerable soldier stuck behind enemy lines, and then you end up on the flip side where you're now literally a gunship blowing up the same guys who've been chasing you, and it's great. Um, and where all this leads to is they break up the usual monotonous gameplay. They break up the whole formula of you're in a battlefield situation, you got to fight a bunch of bad guys. It keeps things interesting, and it doesn't happen all the time throughout the game, COD 4, but it happens here and there, and it happens in just the right spurts where it makes every mission stand out in their own special way. Um, so those would be my criticisms, though, of 2019's gameplay. One is needs to be more sparing with their more unique mission structure types. Shoot House should be a lightning in the bottle situation where it's the one mission in the entire game where you clear a house. And then the other is the and the other one is cutscenes. Less cutscenes. Let the player experience the game the way they want to experience it. Don't force them to watch cutscenes. It's a video game, not a movie. Movies are strictly storytelling. Video games are they can be good at storytelling, but they should be fun first. I should feel like I'm having fun every time I pick up the game and play it. So that is all I have to say now about 2019. After 2 videos of crying about how terrible the story is and a 20-minute video about how the gameplay is actually kind of decent, I think I'm finally done talking about Modern Warfare 2019. I can finally put that demon to rest. I'll reflect on my experience with the multiplayer in 2019. Actually, no, I won't. Instead, I will save that for when I talk about Modern Warfare 2 2022's multiplayer, because that will make the video more interesting. So yeah, that's it. That's all I have now about this series. I will probably do a video on another game once I've played another game. Currently, I've just been sinking my teeth hardcore into Modern Warfare 2's multiplayer, so hopefully I'll find something interesting. Anyway, that's it. That's all I had to say. Goodbye.